Well, I'm probably one of the more active people in Congress on this issue. I'm co-chair with Steve Israel of the Sustainable Energy and Environment Caucus. I serve in the Energy and Commerce Committee and have been very active for several years now, trying to get America to fulfill its clean energy destiny that I believe is our country's destiny. So this has been a 24/7 pursuit for me for several years. I think where we are right now is we're sort of at the beginning of a 100-meter dash, and we're at the starting line, and the starter has said ready, set. He hasn't said ready, go yet, but he has said ready, set. And I think that's where we are right now. Now, the problem is that there's some other countries that are in the blocks on their fingers, poised for that go, when we're just sort of getting the blocks, nailing them into the lane, and starting to put our feet into the blocks. So we are not out of the running yet. We're very much a potential competitor, but we need to get in the blocks, and we need to get set to go. And we're not ready there yet because the U.S. Senate hasn't passed a clean energy bill yet. President hasn't signed it yet. We've not established the market signals yet to engage the enormous investment capital that will be available for the clean energy economy once we get those signals set. So we're not out of the running, but we need to get in the blocks very, very quickly, because in a 100-yard dash, and that's what this is going to be in the clean energy economy, you can't give the other guy a 10-yard head start and expect to catch him in 100 yards. And it is a dash because, as with many high-tech situations, the first adopter has a real advantage. You know, the first person to get to the market with a commercially viable technology has a huge advantage. And unfortunately, other countries, including China, Germany, and others, have made a very strong national commitment to get out there in front fast in solar photovoltaics and wind and a whole host of technologies. So we are very eager to get the U.S. Senate to follow the House's lead and pass a clean energy bill that will create the messages to the market that we're going to cap carbon pollution, which will immediately drive huge investment into these new businesses. We'll create a renewable energy standard, so we get 20% of our electricity from clean energy sources. We'll create a whole new part of the tax code to give homeowners and car buyers and small businesses and large businesses some tax breaks to really adopt these new technologies. That will create a new research and development fund so this country can start doing research and development like the original Apollo project that got us to the moon. You know, we were spending something like 6 or 8 times at least more in our project Go to the Moon than we are in a clean energy project, which has the capacity of saving the planet Earth and jump-starting our economy. So these are all things we got to get done in the U.S. Senate in the next few weeks are going to be pivotal. Well, you remember the first James Bond movie, Dr. No. James Bond fought Spectre, the evil organization that was intent on world dominion. There's no specter behind the science of climate change. In fact, the science of climate change is pretty much resolved, and the verdict is in. We are changing the climate in ways that are very, very dangerous, and that this is clear. So, the fact that some people use some language in an email does not change the fact that the glaciers are melting, the Greenland ice sheet is melting, trees are dying by the millions of acres in Idaho and Washington forest because the beetles, it's not cold enough to kill the beetles anymore. We have huge problems developing in our biological systems because animals cannot essentially respond to these changes. We've got icebergs, huge parts of the Antarctic ice breaking off. We have tundra melting in the north. We've got all of these, facts that you can't argue with facts. Everybody's entitled to their opinion, but nobody's entitled to their own set of facts. So the fact that some people have stubbed their toes in the scientific community saying some things that were wrong, like the pace of the melting of the Himalaya glaciers, has not changed the fundamental science one iota, and that is very, very clear. But I think there's a way of getting past this. I have concluded that there are a lot of people that are not going to accept clear climate science, no matter what you do. You could hit them with 10,000 books written by Albert Einstein, and they just don't want to believe it. So let's get around that issue, and let's not even have a discussion about climate change. Let's find what we can agree on in the whole American community that we can agree on. And there's a couple things that we can agree on without any dispute. One of which is that the national security risks inherent on being addicted to foreign oil is just too high to run. The risk of having to fight foreign wars to guard our access to fossil fuels is too high a price to pay. And all of us, Democrats, Republicans, climate deniers, we all can agree on that. And so the whole effort that we should have as a nation to wean ourselves off of foreign oil, it happens to save us from climate change, but it also helps our national security. And that's something we can all agree on. So we're encouraging our Republican friends and the climate deniers, okay, let's not have that debate. If you refuse to accept science, fine, but let's see what we agree on. That's number one, is the national security necessity of acting. Number two, we have an economic necessity of acting. China is going to steal, steal is too strong a word, they intend to dominate the world economy in the production of lithium-ion batteries, electric cars, solar photovoltaic systems, eventually wind turbines. And if we allow them to take these markets over, we will have done a huge disservice to our own job creation. Now, this is something we can agree on, Republicans and Democrats. We don't have to argue about climate change. We should all be together on that. Point number three, there is something in science that absolutely nobody can disagree on, and that is that the oceans are being destroyed, and that's a pretty strong word, but it's an accurate one, by the carbon pollution in the atmosphere, because they are creating acidic conditions in the oceans. The oceans today are 30% more acidic than they were in pre-industrial times, because we're putting carbon dioxide in the atmosphere out of coal-fired plants. It's then dropping out, going into solution in the ocean, and when it goes into solution in the ocean, it creates acid. People can understand acid. It's not a friendly concept. And that acid is dangerous to us as people, because it has the capacity to make the Earth's ocean inhospitable for the things we depend on. I'll give you an example. We have not been able to grow a crop of oysters, of little kind of baby oysters, for 2 years in the state of Washington, probably because the ocean, well, we know the oceans are more acidic, but the reason for not being able to grow them is most probably the acidic conditions of this. And we know that if the conditions continue, in 100 years, there won't be anywhere on the planet Earth where there'll be healthy coral. 2 weeks ago or 2 months ago, I saw Jane Luchenko, who's head of NOAA, show a video of what happens when you put a shell in water that is as acidic as it will be 100 years from now. I'll tell you what happens to it. It melts. And the reason it melts is the acid melts it, because essentially the calcium carbonate goes back into solution and the shell melts. So here's something that there's no dispute about. These are 3 points: national security, job creation, ocean acidification, that we all ought to come together on and move. I'm always kind of reluctant to, say why other people do things. I will just say this. I think that two things that we need the Senate, for senators to stand up and realize. Number one, the American people get this, and they want strong action on clean energy. I've talked to some of my fellow politicians to seem to say the Americans don't want to act. That's just not right. If you go out and talk to Americans and look at the polling results at Frank Lutz is a Republican pollster, he went out and polled on this. Guess what? The Republicans found out in their poll that something like by 2-to-1 margins, Americans want action on clean energy. And the reason they want action on clean energy is they understand, like I do, that this is the greatest job creation potential engine that is available to us right now. And whatever you think of global climate change, you know, and Americans know, that this is the way we're going to create millions of new jobs in this country. And that's what the Apollo Alliance is all about, is pushing this idea. And Americans get this in their gut, and they're willing to make the investments in the short term to get benefits in the long term and even the short term for job creation. That's number one. Number two, I would counsel people who don't want to move on this to just get over their fear. Because frankly, it's fear that's holding back. It's people who are afraid that Americans aren't smart enough to invent new technologies to deal with that we're not bold enough like we used to be when we went to the moon in the original Apollo project. You got to get over that fear. We're just as smart as when we went to the moon. Our kids are smarter than we are. They're just as energetic. We have an entrepreneurial engine of creation of new businesses in this country, unparalleled in the world. That includes China, if we'll just unleash it. So what I would say, put away your fear, get a little dose of confidence, cast a vote that has trust in Americans' entrepreneurial spirit, and we will beat this beast, and America will grow economically. And I really believe this, so I hope the Senate gets the message.